It's really strange if you're there early, I go up at Creekside. Generally, Monday to Thursday, you can usually walk straight onto the lift and you're gone. But if it's a snow day, and apparently it was, some people thought it was going to snow Tuesday, so it was lined up. But on one day, on the weekend, it was lined up from Creekside right down to the road.
Like recently, like COVID recently, or that was previous years? Oh, wow.
No. There's, once you get on the hill.
We're recording now on YouTube.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So I'm gonna provide some introductions, and then when that has been completed, I will pass the mic to Tim Misko, the LAC chair. So I'll start with Tim Misko. You can put your hand up. He's the chair of the local advisory committee. Thank you so much for all of your work. Len Gursky, ex-chair. You can wave, Len. And LAC member, and Carla Skuse is another volunteer who is acting as liaison between council and community members. Thank you guys so much for your volunteer work. Councillor Alison Morse, practically a volunteer, hardest working person.
Oh, I'm still looking for something, so I'll be back.
Okay. We've got Raj Hayre is our Chief Financial Officer, Patrick Graham, the Director of Engineering at Bowen Island Municipality, and Glenn Spearhan, who is a consultant or former interim Director of Engineering and has now been lured back in to help us with some problems. And Aoife Cashman is our Finance Officer at BIM, and Annette Frischman, Utilities Coordinator. Staff the committee coordinator, and Tim, you can take it from here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steph. So we're still, just as a comment, we're still trying to reach Glenn Cormier.
Len, our neighbor, is up here talking about how he went skiing.
Sorry, I'm just going to ask if everyone can mute them.
He said nobody's up there.
If everyone can mute themselves unless they're talking. Just click in the top.
I understand these people's decisions, though.
Okay, or I'll mute you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Tim, go ahead.
That's okay. So we're still, just as a sidebar, we're trying to reach Glenn Cormier, the vice chair, but we've been unsuccessful. We understand that he was going to attend, so we'll continue to try and catch him in the background. So the agenda's been handed out. As everybody had a chance, anybody that's got a copy of the agenda had a chance to look at it. Is there anything new that we want to add to the agenda?
I have no late.
I'm sorry, Steph, didn't hear you.
I have no late items.
Okay, so nothing to add. So given that, can we get I guess a motion to approve the agenda?
LAC members?
LAC members, I think that's you, Len.
Yeah, so moved.
Okay, and seconded, it'd have to be me, I guess, in this case, and all in support of. So, okay, next item is the adoption of the minutes of the July 6th meeting. I know that I scanned my way through it. Didn't see anything untoward. I don't know about anybody else. Len, did you?
Yeah, I'm in the same place.
Okay, so again, I guess we're adopting the minutes, moving and seconding, yes, no?
Yes, we'll go through, just repeat what we did last time. So moved.
Roger, okay. Public comments. So we've got the floor is open for anything that the public wants to provide at this point. We have a number of members of the public.
There will be an opportunity at the end as well for public to speak.
Okay. Is there anything specifically we'd like that the public would like to add at this point? Okay, not hearing anything. We'll move past that. And now we're going into the Public Works portion. The Public Works utility update. That's going to be Patrick.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. So the primary focus with the Eagle Cliff system has been on figuring out how we meet all of the basic needs: reliable supply, adequate water quality, and ideally improved flows for fire protection. So going back earlier in the year, we had, and this was discussed with the Eagle Cliff public meeting, community meeting, and discussed with council as well. Looked at what would be required to upgrade the reservoir, provide the required upgrades to water mains and treatment to meet drinking water guidelines. Compared that with the option of connecting to the Cove Bay water system, which the new water treatment plant is still on track for completion in the spring of next year, by the end of March. And that was the recommended preferred approach. We've hired, we posted a request for proposals for consultant services to help us with moving the Eagle Cliff Water Project forward, as well as a number of other water system improvement projects on the island. We've since hired Urban Systems. Glenn is the project manager from Urban Systems, who's with us on the call. And the phase one, which is really looking at analysis of alternatives, concept design, and cost estimates, is underway. I'm going to, I know there was a request previously to provide a timeline, and I hadn't sent that out. I'm going to try to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Can you zoom it a little? Oh,
Oh, it goes out too far.
yeah.
Well, okay, so, and it really only starts from September. There was a number of other aspects of the work that went on before then, including the reports to council and the discussion with the Eagle Cliff LAC and at the community meeting. But the RFP closed on October 1st. We did go through the selection process. We got a number of good applications, and we've since started the project. We did submit the grant application for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Rural and Northern Communities, based on the information and cost estimates that we developed internally. So that's been submitted. You'll see that decision on grant award is, officially it's next October. It's not one of these quick moving shovel ready grants. It's a big federal program. Hopefully we find out sooner than that, but that's what we can rely on. And then we've got phase one, which is the analysis of alternatives, concept design, which is underway. These elements, the community meetings, is to be determined. We may be, I've put this in January, but it may actually be combining these meetings in February when we have the analysis of alternatives and concept designs better established. We've been targeting February as an appropriate time to have either an LAC meeting or a community meeting to review that. we're probably up till probably up till April. And Glenn can jump in here if he has anything to add on the schedule, or if I'm saying something that might be not in alignment with the work plan. Where I put this community meeting number 2 in April is a and it may occur earlier than that, but that would be a key decision point about proceeding to phase 2, which would be the detailed design. And there's a cost to that. And we would be taking on, I mean, if in the absence of the decision about the grant, that would be a cost to the Eagle Cliff water system to proceed with the design. If we're to wait until we have our decision about the grant, essentially that pushes the entire schedule by at least 6 months, probably more like 9 months. If we don't start the design until October of next year. So this schedule is timeline is based on proceeding in the spring with the detailed design work, and then being in a position to have tender documents in place and ready to proceed with confirming the financing arrangements. If the grant doesn't fund the entire amount, assuming we're successful, there may be a need for some community debt financing, or some form of contribution from the water system. And then really looking at tendering and constructing the project in 2022. That would be a realistic time frame. And again, if we stop after phase 1, concept design, wait until we hear about the grant before proceeding with detailed design, then we're pushing the construction and completion into 2023, most likely. So that's the major initiative that's underway. In terms of operational updates, another update that's, and I'll circulate this. We'll provide this to the LAC. Is there any questions about that? Should I stop sharing the screen at this point?
I think the only, if I may, Patrick, overall, I think looks great. Just might be the community meeting number 1 might be more of early February instead of early January.
Yeah. And then I guess it's community meeting number 2 is really would be focused on that decision about proceeding with design or waiting. That would be the focus of that second meeting in April. So I'll change that. I'll move that to February. Okay. The other significant issue that's recently been addressed is the water main leak that was discovered near Highland Trail. And that has been fixed. And I'll just, whoops. And it has had a measurable impact on the leakage. I'll just share my screen again. Can you see that?
So Patrick, I'm just where you're putting your cursor now, and the water flow drop, that is pre and post Highland Trail repair. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So the flow at night was getting up, above 15 gallons per minute, and it dropped down to not down to zero, but substantially lower, and has since drifted a bit higher again. And our operations staff suspect that there may be other leakage in that same section of water line, which we need to investigate. When the leak repair was done, they noted that the pipe was old and the backfill was large angular rock, not really what you would typically want to use for pipe bedding. And so it's quite possible that we have some additional repairs to do in that area.
So Patrick, I can't see the scale on the left side of the chart. So what is the range? Understanding there's a little bit of creep, but trying to figure out what roughly are we talking about the midpoint of this range now?
Well, the midpoint of the range is.
Can you make it a bit bigger, Patrick?
So that's 10. These are gallons per minute. That's 10, 20.
Okay.
Where's zero?
Zero's down at the bottom, down here.
Oh, okay.
So
it sounds to me, or it looks to me, as though we still have the mysterious 7-8 gallons per minute unexplained that originally the suspicions were that it may be around the Williams Road area. Is that correct then?
Yeah, there's still some leakage. In talking with the operations staff, they now seem to think it's more likely in the same area of near Highland Trail. But it's something that we need to investigate further.
Okay, so is there a plan then to dig up Highland Trail further to try and determine that, or what are we doing about that?
We don't have a firm plan yet. That's whether in terms of how much we have to dig up versus using the listening devices versus sequentially shutting off valves and checking flows on our monitoring system. We still have to figure that out, how we address this. Right now, there's some substantial leakage in one of the west side systems that our staff are trying to track down, and then this would be the next priority would be to try and get to the bottom of the Eagle Cliff leakage.
That would be nice. I mean, we do know that we've been dealing with this is, I think, year 3 now, is it not?
I'd have to look at how the leakage has changed over time. I think there's always been leakage, and it's gotten worse recently. We found a major source that made it quite a bit better, and then the middle of the night flows dropped almost to zero after that leak was repaired. And so the optimistic conclusion was that we'd resolved that ongoing leak. I mean, it was in the range of 4 to 5 gallons per minute, so quite a bit less than the 10 to 15 that we were seeing more recently. And So once the leak was repaired and it dropped down close to zero at night, the expectation and hope was that we'd found it, right? That we found the source of the leakage, and that, this had gotten worse over time, gone from 4 up to, 12 gallons per minute. And then it was, you can sort of see that it's,
I think, Patrick, I may have been reading the chart incorrectly, and that may be on me. So what you're saying is the peaks that we're seeing on the bottom of the chart, where, post repair, where it shows that it's near zero, those are the middle of the night readings,
right.
As opposed to this whole chart being the daily representatives at the 4 in the morning reading. Is that correct?
Right. So it's the bottom, in terms of looking for leakage, it's the bottom peaks.
Okay, understood. I was looking at the average of that, thinking that this was, the average 4 o'clock in the morning reading. So I understand what you're saying now, and I see what you mean about how there does seem to be an inching up back into that 4 gallon per minute range as we've moved halfway through the chart again.
Yeah, so it was kind of like the first half of November, things were looking pretty good, and we'd actually talked to Urban Systems about, one of the components of their work plan was intended to be trying to locate the leak on Williams Road, which was our previous suspicion. And they were directed to focus on other things. Then mid-November, it seems like something has started leaking somewhere, and that's what we have to uncover. Not to the same extent as it was in October, but something that needs to be addressed. So.
Okay, Roger, got it. Thank you.
Patrick, aren't most of the Highland Drive water pipes are above ground, and many of them insulated, of course? Like I said, Dave Wrench would know that, because that was one of his areas when we did the monitoring. But I thought, like I said, what's underground was that where it was leaking, that was fixed. And I remember I went up and had a look too, and you could see all that awful material. But then about partway up the hill, the pipes come out of the ground, and they just go along the landscape. Are the new houses or the upgrades there, has that all covered things up again, or is it just, you would see that water, I think, because that's really rocky there, up, higher up, but I don't know.
Yeah. Let me share another screen here. It wasn't actually the above ground lines. Yeah, the lines on, and this is our.
Oh, okay.
This is our GIS system. It's not terribly accurate. It's something we need to work on, having a better inventory of our system.
I see it. Yeah, I see it there though. Yeah, running along 202.
It was the main along Eagle Cliff Road. It wasn't.
Yeah, right.
And it was actually over here.
Yes.
This isn't quite correct.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the line up on Highland Trail. It was along Eagle Cliff Road, and so we need to have a closer look at that section.
Yeah. Thanks.
And I suppose the other operational update would be in terms of emergency planning. We've installed the 2 5,000 gallon tanks up on Highland Trail, and we put those in place in case we needed to connect or fill them from the Hood Point water system in the event that Eagle Cliff Reservoir ran out, and that we didn't end up having to do that. The intention is to leave those tanks in place as a, as an emergency measure, at least for the next 2 years, 2 summers. And hopefully.
So Patrick, sorry to interrupt. Just for my understanding, please, I know the tanks are there. Are they actually plumbed in the system and any pumps necessary to provide water from them, et cetera? Is that all in place, or is it just the tanks and we're waiting until the need before we go to the next step?
Yeah, they're not actually connected yet. That would be fairly quick to do if things were looking like they're going to be needed. Emergency measures are going to be needed. That would be, that could be done in a day to create that connection.
Thank you.
So that's what else have we got here? That's the water utilities update. Those are the key elements. If there's any questions about that, we can address that at this time.
Do you have questions for Patrick?
So Patrick, there's also a note in the agenda that the November 6th, 2020, or are you carrying on down A, B, C, D, E, and this is just the first?
Those are mostly like supporting documents for Patrick's verbal report.
Okay. Is there anything further down on any of these that you need to touch on? I know that, as I said at the beginning, there was 58 pages, and I'm afraid I did not print, though I did read the document to have it on hand. So just wondering if there's anything else you want to touch on any of that.
Okay, well, I suppose on the first attachment there, 4.1b, it's just the breakdown of the costs relating to the Urban Systems Consulting contract. And we've only awarded the phase 1, and the costs of that phase are broken up according to the water systems that are being addressed. So 21,500 is the cost to the Eagle Cliff system. I should point out that that would be higher, but we did get that $10,000 infrastructure planning grant to support this work. So that's paying for a portion of it. And then the phase 2 and 3 costs are to be determined. And that would be the decision point getting into March, April of next year, is to look at, do we move forward with the, approximately $80,000 worth of detailed design work, or do we wait until later in the year when we know about the grant? In terms of the Grafton Lake sustainability assessment, I think we are still looking at some longer term growth scenarios that might include other developments within the Cove Bay water system and additional properties being connected in between Cove Bay and Eagle Cliff. In general, it's a very good water source, and we don't expect there to be an issue with supply to Eagle Cliff. I think I've touched on everything in that. Annette's put a list of items that were raised at last year's LAC meetings and summarized the status of those. And I think touched on everything relating to Eagle Cliff. Unless there's any other questions.
So just one that may be part of this or it may not. I know that during one of the previous meetings, there was much discussion, and in the previous report on the recommendation to connect Eagle Cliff to Cove Bay, there was still the question of the capital contribution from Eagle Cliff to Cove Bay water system, and the number, as I recall, was roughly 10K was being tossed around fairly easily. Has there been any further work or calculation or discussion or thought put towards that? Are we any further down that road per property?
No, I think that the $10,000 per connection is a reasonable estimate of where that will be. We did look at what the cost or what the value of the assets within the system are divided by the number of connections, and excluding the grant-funded portion of the water treatment plant. It leads to just under $10,000.
But I thought there was also discussion about the intrinsic value that Eagle Cliff Water Underground Works also had value, and that had not been taken into account, as I recall, and other things like that. I thought the $10,000 number was pretty preliminary and really top of the wave, as opposed to, and I'm bringing this up because I don't want this to suddenly be carved in stone without ensuring that there's, additional discussion, review, intense scrutiny, etc. on that number, because that number, just to be clear for everybody else, Patrick, you obviously know this clearly, that $10,000 is above and beyond anything that is related to the capital cost of actually making a connection. That this is just a contribution, would be considered Eagle Cliff's contribution to Cove Bay's capital.
Yeah.
So I want to, make sure that is still on the record and discussed, and that it's still open-ended. It's not a, suddenly carved in stone kind of thing without proper scrutiny.
No, it's definitely not carved in stone, and that's part of the overall cost estimate picture, and to be discussed along with the details of the options at probably a February meeting.
Is that still work that is included as part of the RFP that Glenn is working on, or is that separate from?
Glenn's work is focused on the technical aspects of the improvements. We are working with Urban Systems, and he will probably be pulled into discussions about financing as well.
Okay.
So it's part of the analysis that's ongoing.
So I just again, I throw this out just for interest. Glenn, your report on the sustainability of the Cove Bay water system to support the additional load of Eagle Cliff, I found that was interesting. I particularly found it interesting that in terms of calculated and estimated flows, that Eagle Cliff accounted for roughly a possible 12% growth in water consumption. And I'm wondering if the $10,000 per household, is that representative of the $10,000, or is the $10,000 completely isolated from the anticipated water flow increases, and it's, you know, merely a per household as opposed to percentage of water flow kind of situation. If that's being clear at all.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the background of $10,000, but I would say it's been.
Glenn, can you get closer to your mic, please?
You're
We can't hear you,
I'm
Glenn.
sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I would say I don't know the basis of the $10,000, but I would say that there's currently insufficient information to support any number right now in the exercise that we're going through. And as Patrick indicated, we did that preliminary work on Grafton Lake, but we're going to be updating it because we feel that there's been some anticipated long-term growth that hasn't yet been accounted for. So we're in the midst of updating that, and there's still lots of cost estimates to be prepared to determine what allotment of costs are going to come. So I would say, to support Patrick's comment, it's nothing's cast in stone. Everything needs to be revisited.
Okay, thank you.
For
Pam, it's Allison. I just wanted to add, I'm getting can you guys hear me all right? I'm getting
You're breaking up a lot, Allison.
unstable internet notices. Okay.
Are you still there? Can you get?
I'm here and I can see everybody, but my internet's breaking up. Staff could maybe resend to everybody the expansion policy, because that's where the 10,000 is calculated from, which is something we discussed with the water systems a number of years ago.
Expansion policy would be.
It's under the policies somewhere on the website.
Okay, I will do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have any more discussion, any more questions, any more comments on Patrick's update from anybody? Any more concerns? Hand waving, anything?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Malcolm, yes?
Hi. I just have a question regarding, earlier you mentioned the $80,000 cost for starting the actual design process for this entire project. And it depends on whether we wait until the big grant is approved at the very earliest next October. And I'm just wondering, what is the disadvantage of waiting until we know about that grant?
Good question.
Yeah, the disadvantage would mainly be time. You probably have, you're probably waiting another 8 or 9 months before you move forward with that piece. If you were to move forward with design work in the spring, then there would be a possibility of moving right into the tender and construction phase once the grant is confirmed.
Patrick, just to further Malcolm's statement there, and I'm afraid I don't have committed to memory your Gantt chart. Which 6 months are we talking about? In other words, if we're delaying 6 months in the winter, it's no big deal. We have nothing but water. But if we're delaying and losing 6 months in the summer, perhaps it's a big deal.
It would essentially be, the April to October, March, April to October.
Understood, but I'm looking now at phase 3 construction,
right?
Which in a perfect scenario starts March, April, May. I can't see how far it goes out through till December. So really, if we're losing 6 months there, we're moving it to the fall, which still ensures that we have water, you know, potentially by mid 2023 summer. So that delay does not really impact us very much, does it?
Possibly not. I think what it does is it substantially increases the risk that we're looking at the summer of 2023 also as not having a solution in place.
Okay. Can you move your chart to the left so that right now I've got nothing but faces past April? Is that a possibility? There we go. So
this is the construction phase here under the.
Understood. So if I look at this chart right now, we're scheduled to have construction completed by December 2022,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So that means that during the winter of 2022/23, we're on Cove Bay water. We could easily go 6 or 8 months into 2023 on Eagle Cliff water because we have an abundance of water in that winter. You know what I'm saying? So that really, as long as towards the end of summer 23, we've got our water or mid to end of summer 23, we should be fine. So that's a good point, Malcolm. I thank you for making it because that might suggest that 6 to 8 months is not entirely critical.
Well, my reason for asking is pretty obvious. It's not to play doomsday, but it would be nice to know that a great portion of this huge expense would be covered before we actually start building.
Agreed. And the impact of waiting is not necessarily dire.
I agree, but that's based on just listening to all of you.
Yeah, I mean, this is an estimate. I mean, we could be in a situation where this is, despite our best efforts, is pushed several months, and it in fact does make a difference. But yeah, you're right. It may be possible to wait and still be on track to have a solution before the critical period in 2023.
Yeah, exactly.
If I may, I see another issue around this timing thing is in the industry, what is the best practices? Like, in other words, people that end up having successful upgrades to their water system, is the usual pattern that they do start it before the grant is permitted? Or is it always, no, let's get the grant before we do it? Because we've gone through this quite a few times with Eagle Cliff now. We had the Creos report twice. Nothing ever was done. What I'm afraid is that there is the potential here. If we don't get this ball rolling, the ball has got a lot of inertia and it's not going to roll. And now we're going to be into 2024 because we're waiting. Also, costs of the system are going to go up, up, up. It's not a big inflationary spiral right now. So I'm just saying we got to be careful that by putting things off, we may be really putting them off, and nothing happens. So anyway.
That's a fair comment, Len, and that was actually one of the other items that we discussed at the last meeting, and I don't know whether we got clarity on that, Glenn. The idea that money spent in advance of the grant is recoupable or not.
I'm pretty sure it's not.
Not.
So, I mean, different grants have different rules. This one is any contract that you've awarded prior to grant approval is not eligible. So that would apply to consulting contracts as well as construction contracts.
Patrick?
Yeah.
in your grant application, did you include the cost redesign in the costs that you put in the grant application?
Yes.
So by doing the pre-work, we wouldn't be able to recover those, so we'd get a lesser grant.
Yeah, possibly.
I was thinking, just to make it simple for everybody, is it possible to just do another Gantt chart underneath in a different color that shows the 6 months pre-design work pushed out after the decision?
Yeah, we can do that. It's easy.
Okay,
And
are there any
another,
other questions from anybody? Sorry, I may have cut somebody off. Was that you, Patrick?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that in the during the phase one, we'll be looking at phasing and delivery options. It may be possible to do that it's not entirely one big chunk. I mean, we do know that a portion of the connection from the Cove Bay system, the further south section is the same section that's already been requested by a number of residents in the Ocean View area who are having issues with their wells. So they already started the process of creating a local area service and expansion and getting the cost numbers together. And so the design, and that part is much further advanced. And so that's been put on hold pending this larger initiative. If we go back to them and indicate that, you know, this larger project is further delayed, there might be a desire on their part to move forward with the first piece. So that's possible as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions or discussion items from anybody? Gone. We're happy with that. Okay, so next, I mean, it shows a recommendation.
Patrick, we're still sharing. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. So under 4E, there's a recommendation that Eagle Cliff Water System Local Advisory Committee receive Water Systems LAC recommendation status report dated November 6th, etc. I'm not sure there's anything that needs to be done on that. I think that was included as part of this package. Was it not?
Yeah, that can just be by unanimous consent.
Okay.
Just for my records.
Okay.
Thank you.
So next item moving is for finance. So Raj, I think that means the floor is yours.
Thanks, Tim. I'm just going to share my screen here, if you bear with me for just a quick sec. And okay, are you all seeing the cover page of my PowerPoint here? Yeah, perfect. So the finance, we're going to talk about the operating budget and the capital budget pressures in 2021 on the Eagle Cliff system. So the objective of the finance section here is to explain the cost pressures for 2021 and provide information that's proposed to be included in the 5-year financial plan for both the capital and operating budgets, and for the LAC to make a recommendation to council based on our discussion in this section of the agenda. So in terms, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the operating budget here. So the expenses of a water system must be supported by the revenues that are collected from the system. So we're talking about both capital, a contribution to capital, and the operating budget. The operating budget expenditure provisions are comprised of administrative costs that have been allocated to the system and direct costs of operating the system. So the administrative costs that get allocated to each water system consist of a proportion of administrative salaries and benefits that reflect the effort spent on water utilities. the municipal liability insurance, the audit fees, IT support costs, municipal hall rent, and office supplies and postage. And typically the way that works is a percentage of these costs that represent effort on the water systems is allocated to the water systems in total. And then a second allocation is done to each water system based on the number of connections relative to the total number of connections. In terms of the direct costs, again, the operating wages of the public works staff who work in utilities are included, supplies and services costs incurred within the system, any contract services incurred within the system, and property insurance relative to value of assets within the water system, within the system, maintenance and infrastructure of equipment, and utilities costs of basically operating the equipment and whatnot for the water system. So in terms of next slide here is going to talk about the 2021 operating expenditure pressures. So there are 110 connected properties in Eagle Cliff that share in the that contribute towards through utility rates to the system. And this year's expenditures are driven by pressure in the salaries and benefits costs, which is going up by $3,300 to Eagle Cliff. And then big pressure is a contribution to capital reserve. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, but essentially the reserve balances are not sufficient in contrast to the replacement needs, capital renewal and replacement needs, and future capital spending required on the system. So what we're proposing in the financial plan for 2021 is a 20% increase in revenue. And then the outer years works out to about 7% and 8% respectively. And what that translates into essentially is an increase in the parcel tax in 2021. Yes, Tim?
Hi, Raj. Just to be sure, so you're looking, I want to make sure I've got this. You're looking for a 20% increase in 2021. What was the total amount of O&M increase in 2020 with the increase in the water rates that we?
In 2020 itself?
Yeah.
I don't think the operations and maintenance increased considerably. The rates in 2020 went up to fix the relationship between, I don't believe we were raising, I haven't looked at 2020 right now, but we were not contributing. We were using some of the funds from the parcel tax to cover operating costs. So the rate increase last year went to cover that portion. There hadn't been rate increases in a number of years. So the parcel tax was covering, we were contributing less to reserves because the parcel tax contribution was going to cover off part of the cost of operations in 2020.
Yeah, I understand that. But the bottom line is, you know, the water rates went up significantly in 2020. So
and they went up because the water rates were not covering the operating costs of the system. So the operating costs were being covered off through the parcel tax. So we were contributing less to the reserve than what we were collecting on the parcel tax.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but
okay.
As a percentage in 2020, they went up significantly. I know it was a sliding scale, but they did go up significantly. If we're looking at, and as I recall, the combination of the water consumption rates in terms of the dollar value and the total of the capital parcel tax that we already collect put us in the upper mid range of island-wide water, the water uses, you know, from the various water systems. So on top of that, we're looking at an additional 20% for 2021.
Tim, can you let me get through the presentation so I may address some of your questions, because it may not be as, I mean, the impact may be different than what you're assuming it's going to be right now.
Okay, I will back out.
Let me just finish and then I'll address your points if you don't mind.
Yeah, it just, my hair almost caught on fire with the 20% number, that's all.
Okay, so we're looking to increase the revenue by 20% over last year in terms of dollars. And it does imply an increase in rates, but we're not looking to raise the utility rates by 20%. And I'll get to that in just a minute. So what we're looking at actually in 2021 is a 54% increase in the parcel tax from what was being paid in the previous year. And that will go towards the 13,600 increase proposed to the capital reserve. And you'll see a little bit more as we go forward. And then in subsequent years, we're looking at 15% increases per year to the parcel tax. And you'll see why later in the presentation. And then at the utility rates itself, we're looking at a 4% increase in 2021 over the previous year, and then 2% increases in the outer years to cover inflation, because we're not aware of any significant operating cost increases if the system continues to operate the way it is. So that being said, I'm going to kind of go into the operating statement here. So the operating statement here reflects the budget for the 5 years. And if we focus at looking at 2021, you'll see the basically.
Are you able to zoom it a little bit?
Let me see if I can.
Oh, that's fine.
Trouble seeing. Yeah, I'm not quite, I can't zoom that, Steph. Oh, hold on. That's changing my slides. If everybody can follow, I mean, this was sent out with the agenda, so people do have a copy of that statement in front of them as well.
Okay, sorry for interrupting.
No worries. So essentially the 45,900 you're seeing over there is the increase I talked about in the parcel tax of 13,000, which will go entirely towards the transfer to the surplus reserve. So I'm proposing at the surplus reserve, $47,000 be contributed to the surplus reserve for capital as opposed to 33,000 in 2020. And the rates for the water rates will go up to raise about $3,300 of revenue, $3,500 of revenue. So we'll be generating $66,000 in revenue in comparison to $63,500. In terms of, and then we've got inflationary increases in the outer years other than the pressure on the reserves contribution. We're taking the reserves contribution up to about $80,000 by 2025 to address the renewal and replacement needs of the system, which I'll talk about in a subsequent slide as well. So in terms of what that would mean in rate increases, staff are proposing that essentially the people who consume under 100 meters a day on average, the rate stays, 100 gallons a day rather, but the rate stays the same. There's approximately 83 households based on the billing history that consume under 100 gallons a day. And there's about 24 households that consume between 101 and 225 gallons a day. So we propose increases in the 101 to the 170 or 225 gallon consumption range. That would contribute an additional $3,500 required. So I can pause here on the operating budget to gather any thoughts or concerns. Other than I'll talk a little bit more about the contribution to reserves after we get through the capital slide.
So Raj, just looking at the rate increases for the 100 gallon and up per day users, the rate of increase or proposed increase seems to be rather inconsistent. So if you use between 100 and 150 gallons, you're looking at $100 increase. Whereas if you use, up to 174 gallons, it's only a $50 increase, and more so up to 200 gallons is only a $25 increase. That seems inconsistent with the goal of trying to encourage conservation as much as possible.
It It does seem somewhat inconsistent, but if you take a look at the number of users, I mean, we'll have to do some further analysis. This is just very preliminary, Tim, but you've only got one user at the 175, 200 range.
I noticed, I did notice that, but it's still the principle of trying to encourage conservation. I mean, ideally, we have none up in that range, right?
Yeah. So we'll have to play around with that a little bit more. I mean, essentially, we were trying to hit the higher groups, but yeah, we didn't need as big an increase in the, I mean, we needed a little bit bigger increase in the 101 to 150 because you have larger users. We were trying to keep that increase a little bit reasonable and coming up with a rate. So if we actually, lessened the increase there and made a bigger change down below, it'd have to be a much more significant change simply based on the number of users. But we can play around with that. I mean, this is just an approximate. The proposal is to try and
yeah, it's merely a starting point.
Understood from higher users.
Yeah, but that's my comment on it after looking at it.
Yeah, we can revisit that and take a look at that. So any more questions on operating before I move over to capital? Okay, so I'm going to move over to the capital slide here, and I'm going to talk about the bigger picture on capital here in terms and why I'm proposing that increase in reserves, and then in terms of the specific projects that are included here, I will turn I'll turn it over to Patrick afterwards to go over the individual projects that are included within the budget. So essentially the bigger picture here is over the next 5 years, there's about $3.3 million of expenditure required for infrastructure renewal and replacement needs to overhaul the system. And the capital reserve balance currently, as everybody knows, has an estimated opening balance of $207,000 of available funding in it. So the reserve balance to meet the renewal and replacement needs for a 40-year-old system should be approximately equivalent, or rather, what I was going to say there was the reserve balance to address the renewal and replacement for a 40-year-old infrastructure should be approximately equal to 50% of the replacement value of the system, given the life of infrastructure is about 80 to 90 years. So based on the Eagle Cliff infrastructure's age and not taking into consideration condition information, there should roughly be about $1.6 million in that reserve to address replacement needs. So the operating provision
Raj,
that's why the operating provision in the budget is suggesting an increase in the contribution to reserve, simply because the reserve balance is extremely light in contrast to the needs, regardless of whether we go to a combined Cove-based system or some other alternative has to be found. This balance is extremely light to address the capital renewal and replacement needs of the system.
And my understanding is, or was, based on the meetings we had last year, that Eagle Cliff was sitting fairly comfortably in terms of the capital reserves compared to the other water systems. So is this going to be an across the island reach to try and bring all water systems up to this level of contribution?
It is proposing this across most water systems. Actually, Hood Point's reserves are in considerably better shape comparative to other systems, but otherwise, this is common. This is a common theme across all water systems. And perhaps King Edward Bay is not in the same situation because there's a so much newer system, but the remaining all water systems are in the same situation where reserve balances are extremely light in comparison to the replacement value of the infrastructure. And just to give you again, in terms of I'm going to jump forward a slide here. So the estimated replacement value of the Eagle Cliff system is about $3.2 million. And 2 million of that is roughly in the water mains and service connection, $600,000 replacement cost for the dam. And then again, 346 attributed to the PVR stations and arsenic filter and chlorination station shed. And these are estimated values. It's not an exact science as of 2019.
So just again, top of the wave and understanding.
Yeah,
you know,
sorry.
Go back to that slide, please.
Oh, this one, yeah.
The one, yes. Just, you know, thinking about this from the boat that we're in right now, where we're having much discussion and debate over the idea of connecting to the Cove Bay water system. In that eventuality, we're dropping over $1 million of our replaced value because the need for the wells no longer exists. The need for the chlorination station, shed, and arsenic filters is no longer required, and the open reservoir and dam are no longer part of the system. So that's, you know, where you're suggesting a need to establish a capital fund based on assets that we will no longer need. So I think we need to look at that in light of the bigger picture as well, do we not?
We probably do, but even if you were looking at it in contrast to the $2 million, you should still have $1 million in your reserves. You're still extremely light. And yeah.
Understood, but that's $1 million of which $500,000 based on your formula would not be required.
It may not be, but nonetheless, a significant increase in the contribution is required in 2021, and we can always revise refine and revise what's required in those outer years. You're only committing to 2021. We do a 5-year financial plan every year. So as the situation changes, those outer years will change as well. So coming back to this proposed parcel tax here, essentially the parcel tax has been $240 since before 2008. I just looked at the last parcel rate bylaw, which was amended in 2008, I believe, and it was $240. So I'm proposing it be increased to $370. It's applied to all parcels in Eagle Cliff. So I believe it's applied to about 124 parcels. So right now being applied to 124 parcels, it raises $29,800. And I'm proposing that it'll raise $45,900 in 2021, all of which will go to your reserve for capital renewal and replacement. And I've just provided this slide here. The other parcel tax applied in Eagle Cliff is for the maintenance and repair of the beach float, and it is $20 per parcel, raises $2,500 a year, which goes towards the maintenance costs, which are included in the operating costs for the budget. So being sourced for those operating
actually
costs.
those funds are for the beach float specifically, that not for the
operating costs of the beach float specifically. Yeah. Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, maintenance costs of the beach float specifically. That's everything I have for you guys.
Okay, so we throw the finance budget plan open to the floor for comment, discussion. Anybody? I can't see everybody, so if somebody's waving a hand.
Here, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you. Elizabeth, did I see your hand?
Yes, I may ask a question. What happens if we join up with the Cove Bay water system? What happens to our present reservoir and everything attached to it? Do we still use it, or are we bringing that into the system, and would that reduce our costs because we're making a contribution in that sense?
Patrick, you want to touch on that, or do you want me to?
It would probably be decommissioned it wouldn't be part of the supply, because the supply would be from Grafton Lake through the new treatment plant that's being built. So the details of what exactly would need to be done in terms of decommissioning would have to be worked out. If there's a scenario where the dam and reservoir are kept in place, we do have some requirements that we'd have to fulfill relating to the provincial dam safety regulations. Earlier this year, the dam safety officers from the province came out. Eagle Cliff Reservoir has never been classified as a dam. They wanted to look at it, and so I went up there with them there. They've now classified it as a significant consequence dam, the same rating as Honeymoon Lake and Grafton Lake. And there's a number of requirements to develop a dam emergency plan, a dam operation, maintenance, and monitoring manual and plan. And we would likely, as part of that, have to undertake some more detailed assessment of the dam integrity, which may identify additional works that need to be done to relating to dam safety. And then there's different requirements that relate to dam decommissioning. So those requirements haven't really been reflected in the scenarios that we were discussing. Likely we'd be looking at the decommissioning scenario, though. That would be my guess.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Tim, one of the things I forgot to do, and you're going to see subsequently, was I forgot to have Patrick walk you through the individual items that are included in the capital plan. Do you want me to share my screen again so that he can walk you through those, or is everybody pretty happy they've seen them? They don't need further explanation on them.
I think the only one that was a question was the $100,000 identified for the dam liner, which is still in there, and obviously that's not on, so that can probably be removed in that form, though it may come in some other form.
Do you want to show it again, Raj? So
yeah, I can share my screen again. Hold on just a sec.
It's 100,000, but it's not reference to the dam. It's reference to a water main leak.
Oh, I thought it was a liner.
No,
Share screen.
not the one I'm looking at in my package.
Oh, yeah, no, that's relating to,
Yeah.
this goes back to our earlier discussion where we'd assumed that we would have to replace a section of water main along Williams Road. And
That's right.
eventually we do. It just may not be required right now. However, we may have to replace a section of water main along Eagle Cliff Road. And we're not quite sure what the scope of that will be. If we don't end up spending money on that item, it would go back into reserves. It's would allow us to move forward with a substantial replacement of a problematic section if we're able to define the scope of that.
And then I guess the other item comes up, the $130,000 for the Cove Bay connection. That comes back to the discussion we had earlier, whether there's a strategic advantage to slowing the pace of the plans and spec development to post grant approval or not.
Yeah, if that work is deferred and ultimately well, even if it's deferred and it's funded by the grant, I think we still have to include it in the budget. Like the 2.9 million shown there, hopefully that's funded by grant money. But it's shown in the Eagle Cliff budget.
Yeah, understood. But the point of the discussion was if we're waiting until the grant is or isn't approved before we proceed with, further fleshing out of the phase 3 of the plans and specs, that may be that $70,000 or $80,000 that moves. It still needs to be captured, but it may be grant funded, and it may be grant funded in 2022.
Yes.
What we're doing with that is we're actually assuming that we will receive the grant. So we've showed grant funding as a funding source, and obviously we'll need to revise that if the grant funding doesn't materialize. One of the other things that we'll need to do is have to work with Patrick. You'll notice that the 2021 budget does show $256,000 of projects. We have to basically slim that down so that we're within the estimated reserve balance. And I've also got to smooth it out, make sure that reserve is going to be, it will be adequate in future years because there'll be contributions to the reserve based on the plan, but there is a little bit of slimming down of the 2021 numbers that will be required so that we're within the reserve funding restrictions.
Got it. Thank you.
And that may be a matter of changing that replacing leaking water main section to 50,000, since it's uncertain what the scope of that is in any case.
Yeah. Okay.
Hopefully by the time we finalize the budget, you'll have found the leak and you'll know.
Agreed.
Hopefully.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Can we go back into the full screen again, please?
Yeah, sorry, I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Any other hand waving that I see? Glenn, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, really sorry. I had you in my calendar at the wrong time. My apologies on that, but I'm just going back to the question in regards to the current reservoir and the decommissioning of that, if that's what happens. It sounded to me like there's costs associated to decommissioning as well as ongoing costs related to the dam maintenance moving forward. Does that become a burden to Eagle Cliff budget, or is that an asset that the municipality will take over?
That's to be determined. It may be that decommissioning, there aren't that extensive expenses required for decommissioning. I'm not sure. And I'm also not sure what that post Cove Bay connection scenario looks like. It may be that becomes a municipal responsibility, but we haven't had those discussions yet. I think the first thing to do is to understand what is our long-term solution for Eagle Cliff. Does the reservoir fit into it or not? And then we come up with our plans and financing arrangements for the reservoir from there.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Are we okay to move beyond finance? Thank you, Raj.
Thank you.
Okay.
Tim, do you mind if I share my screen? I've got the proposed recommendation and a couple of notes that could support you and the other members in voting on a recommendation to council.
Okay.
See it?
Yeah, just reading it. So it says that the Eagle Cliff the Eagle Cliff Water System Local Advisory Committee recommend that council direct staff to include the draft Eagle Cliff Water System 2021 operating budget as presented. I don't know that we're there yet, are we?
Oh, sorry. You said you're moving off finance.
Yes, but I thought that we were still discussing with Raj. There was some things
Okay.
that you were going to look at and adjust first.
Oh, okay.
Was presented or to be amended. Maybe
Yeah, I think.
and Steph, if that's acceptable wording.
As presented and amended.
And to be amended.
Well, that's what we're recommending, the following recommendations, the following amendments.
Oh, with the following. Okay, sorry, I was not reading.
Sorry about that. I didn't see that either.
Okay, no, that's great.
Uh,
The following amendments, and then one note about the operating budget. Were you going to check into the consistency of the?
yes.
Actually, that
I'm just jotting down notes for the LAC.
So staff, we don't need to capture that here because that has nothing to do with the budget. The budget has to do with raising revenue, and we know we have to raise that amount of revenue. So that's going to be Tim's mentioned that, and we'll take a look at that when we're considering the tax rate, parcel tax and rates, which are not part of the budget. They're totally separate exercise.
Right.
Okay, I want to understand what you're saying there, Raj. Here,
I'll clarify on that, Tim. Sorry.
Thank you.
The rates that we had talked about.
Now, the rates you're talking right now is the parcel tax or the water consumption rates?
Both the parcel tax and the water rate, the water rates are a separate bylaw outside of the financial plan that we require to change. Essentially, so they're outside of the financial plan. The financial plan supports the creation of those bylaws, is what I'm saying. So the rates are not a discussion of we discussed them when we talked about them, and I've noted that, but they're essentially, the operating budget is indicating the amount of revenue we need to collect to support the expenditures and contributions to reserve. It's not addressing the rate structure.
So maybe you can do a separate recommendation if you're not satisfied with the note, Tim, but that recommendation would not be included in the budget recommendation.
Okay. So what you're looking for is our recommendation on an approval of, as I recall, it was a 54% increase.
I'm looking for your recommendation on, not on the 50, I'm looking for your recommendation on the budgeted revenue and expenditures of the.
So do you want to show them? I'll stop and then maybe just show the operating again. And
the operating budget up again.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm as dense as a good fog. But
complicated. There's a lot going on.
So what I'm looking for a recommendation is essentially this operating budget, which shows $45,000, 45,900 of revenue coming from parcel taxes, 66,000 coming from utility rates. Essentially, those are the two changes which support operating expenses of 68,500 and a contribution to the reserves of 47,000.
So to go back to my point, you're looking for our recommendation to approve that 54% increase because that's what the parcel tax budget requirement is.
Okay, yeah, you can put it that way then. That's fine, you can put it that way.
Okay.
There is an increase from 29.8 to 45.9, and if I'm understanding, Tim, you're objecting to that increase.
Let's be clear. I mean, on the LAC, we're right now three bodies that are representing 110 households, and I can't imagine that those other 107 households are going to be jumping for joy with a 54% increase that we're going to recommend. Glenn, Len, am I speaking on behalf of everybody here?
You can also recommend against it if you're as an LAC. I mean, that's your prerogative, right? Essentially, we're wanting council one way or another, or you could abstain from recommending if you want to. That's entirely up to you as well. But essentially, we're looking for some type of advice to council to direct us. And And then the public will have another opportunity to provide comments in the public consultation on the budget that'll take place in January as well, Tim.
Okay, can I get everybody's faces back? Please, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Raj.
Mouse over there, bear with me.
Yeah.
Mouse is going all over the place.
Do you want me to? Okay.
Len, what do we want to pass a motion that says we accept this and recommend it?
Yeah, I was just caught up in the numbers that followed that increase after that, because they just seem to continue going up and up and up. So it's I guess this is the first step in the many years of increases ahead of us.
Glenn probably missed that part of the PowerPoint slide that showed the increases in the parcel tax and the increase in the utility revenue. I'm going to share my screen once again, just really quickly for Glenn's benefit.
Thank you.
So Glenn, when we were talking about the increases, essentially the utility rate revenue increase, the one to the very right-hand side, funds the operating expenditures of the system. So the utility rate revenues need to go up by 4% in 2021, and there's an inflationary increase in the outer years. Where the big issue is in your capital reserves. As you saw, you have a $202,000 capital reserve balance to support over 3 million, even if you're looking at replacement cost and infrastructure replacement cost of just your linear infrastructure of about $1 million. So you essentially don't have any money to be able to address repairs and replacement that need to be made. So we're proposing an increase in your parcel tax of essentially 54% in 2021, which hasn't been increased in a number of years. And then 15% in each of the outer years. And that'll be subject to change based on changes that take place in your system. But at this point in time, we're proposing an increase in your contribution to the reserve to address capital works. Can I add to that? Anything else to that?
Okay.
So this is this all relative to the connection to Snug Cove, or is this over and above that? Like
So this has been done in basically isolation of the connection with this is if you continue operating your system the way it is and you're going to have to replace your infrastructure, you're going to need money to put aside. You should have had $1 million, over $1 million put into reserves if your reserves were adequately funded at this point in time, which Eagle Cliff doesn't have.
So can I make a suggestion, guys, and maybe this might help. I think that maybe we're not in a position to be able to say, yes, we recommend this at this time. Maybe we as an LAC want to meet and have a side discussion on this and figure out how we want to move forward. Is that a fair comment, guys? What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Tim, what I think that the people need to know that are, like Raj and everything, is that we paid down our debt a couple of decades ago, and we decided not to remove that toll or that tax. We said, can we keep it running even though we have no debt to pay down, and let it build up a reserve fund? So in the context of that era, that was enough money to the value of our reservoir. But now, when suddenly our old system has come back to, in a sense, bite us, we're now going to have to adjust our users, because that's what they thought it was. It was never. So when our users hear about this increase, you're going to go, where did that come from? It's right out of left field. So I think it needs to be explained as what we're doing is, as we evolve in our new world, we're changing our water system to be sustainable for the next 50 years. And unfortunately, it's going to cost us.
Yeah,
so maybe you're right, Tim.
As Raj has said, though, this is completely independent of the Cove Bay connection. This is.
Oh, no, but I'm just saying.
This is in today's world. If we're going to be capitally responsible for a water system. What Raj is saying is we need to increase to these kind of reserves, irrespective of. And I think we somehow need to, you know, go back and give a heads up to the community.
Yeah.
Because I mean, my first read on this, my hair went on fire, and I'm in the know, if you will. The other 107 users of the water system who have not had this, I think would be fairly upset if they discovered that, no, we just said, yep, go ahead, 53 per 56, make it 65%. It doesn't matter. Go ahead, stamp it. So I think we need to have a discussion of some sort amongst ourselves and amongst the community before we can just go ahead and say, yes, we do or don't support this.
Can you help me to understand, Raj, let's suppose that the connection to Cove Bay goes ahead and you know, funding or grants go in place for that. If we've moved ahead with upping this this money to our reserve fund, does that then become part of the Cove Bay Reserve Fund?
I don't have an answer on what the structure would look like. So when we're further, I mean, we do a financial plan every year, Glenn. So it would be something, Patrick may know more in terms of what that structure is going to look like at this point. But essentially, I would say that if you became part of the Cove Bay system, essentially, yes, your reserve, whatever, if there's money in reserves, it'll become one system. It will not be two systems, and the reserve balance will merge.
So on that front, Raj, maybe you can help me.
But I think Patrick had, sorry, go ahead.
What does Cove Bay's reserve look like right now?
Cove Bay's has a debt. So it's part of the calculation, and I noticed that Steph has sent out the municipal policy on determining what the amount to join a water system is. It's essentially the value of the assets in the system. And so if we're joining two systems, then the value of both systems' assets get brought into the equation, minus the debt. And that would be the case for Cove Bay, plus whatever capital reserves are being brought on board from Eagle Cliff, you know, divided by the total number of connections.
I understand that there's a formula for all this that works out, but to present it to the Eagle Cliff community as in we're going to be buying in to a system that carries debt and giving them our reserve fund at the same time, which we're now going 55% higher on, and we'll continue. It's a tough sell. I think that's the point. Maybe we should answer the question as to whether or not we're going to be connecting to Cove Bay before we determine if we're going to be making this decision.
At the time you arrive, just to your point, in terms of giving your reserve or taking your reserve balance in, if you turn your attention to the capital information you have in front of you, your reserve balance will primarily be depleted by your capital needs in 2021. So you will have very little in reserves if all of those expenditure requirements are required in 2021 that are identified in the plan.
And I think that would be, I mean, if we do get to the point where we're joining systems, the way you've described it wouldn't be really probably the right way to present it to the members. Essentially, we would come up with a fair rate for contributing to the Cove Bay system per property, and whatever is in reserves would subtract from that required contribution for each property. That's probably a more palatable way to present it. That's a suggestion.
Okay. So are we any changed on my suggestion, or what do you think, Glenn? Can
I just ask a question? That 54% looks really scary, but what's the actual cost per household?
As an actual number, it's not that bad. It's like $130 per year. I'm going by my memory, and
that's correct. It Carla, it goes, actually I had a slide on it earlier, but it goes from $240 a year to $370 a year.
Yeah. And maybe that's, that's a good point, Carla, is you bring it down and it amounts to $10 a month per household. And is that the end of the world?
Well, I had another question just about the user rates. How are those calculated in terms of a usage per day? Do you take the whole year and then divide that per day, or does it a certain amount of days that you have to use over, say, 200 gallons in that day to be in that level of paying? I'm wondering.
Nat, you want to touch on that one? Oh, you're on mute, I think. Can't hear you. I can see your lips moving.
Did Patrick give you his computer?
Okay, I'll touch on it. Nanette, you can either nod or shake your head because we can't hear it. The billing period is from, I'm plus or minus here, about the beginning of June till the end of September, and total consumption during that period of time is determined by the meter readings divided by the number of days, and that gives you what your average household use per day was. Annette, yes, thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, so again, going back to Carla's very good point, is while 54%, does seem to raise hair on fire, perhaps $130 is not quite as significant as one might think. And if that's the case, do we say, yes, we support this as written and planned?
Yeah. And I'm glad Carla made that point, Tim, because I also made that point with council. When we talk about tax rates in the community, and we talk about a 1% tax rate on Bowen Island, for example, if you lock yourself into percentages, so 1% tax rate increase raises you $56,300 here. Whereas a 1% tax increase in a community like, I know I'm getting kind of aside from water, but a community like Burnaby raises them over $3 million. So in terms of what you can buy, like if I equated it into what you could get for the community, you could get a 0.7 FTE, additional FTE with 1% increase on Bowen, whereas you can get 37 more FTEs in a community like Burnaby. So percentages, when you're looking in small numbers, can be scary. And so that's my fault for having presented the percentage as opposed to being focused on the dollar value there.
Yeah, fair point.
Tim, I agree with it. I think move forward. As you just said.
This year, yes.
Say again, Glenn. Sorry, you broke up.
Supported this year. Yeah.
Okay. So does somebody want to make a motion that we support Steph's draft?
Put the motion back up.
Motion without all the crossouts that I was encouraging.
It's okay. It's a work in progress. It's teamwork. I just, Allison made a suggestion that your concern could be recognized in here, but I think I can recognize it in the minutes, just that.
Yeah, no, I just sent you an email to say, forget the suggestion.
So, yeah, take out all the crossouts.
Yeah.
Just be so.
Take out all your bullets too. Yeah, there we go.
So reading that over.
That one.
Are we in support of that? And if so, does somebody want to make a motion?
Come on, Glenn, Carla.
Yeah.
Yes. I will make a motion.
Okay, seconded by. Second. All in favor? Hands. Okay, there we go. Done. It was a long, hard battle, but we're there.
So can I just jump in? Was there something about deferring? Did you want to make a?
Well, I think what we are going to do is we need more work from Patrick on that in terms of the possibility of moving that forward. And I think the bottom line is, as Raj noted, we need to note that that work and cost is coming, whether it's supported by grant or taxpayers is to be determined, and whether we're moving forward on the 6 months or 8 months deferment, as had been suggested earlier, still yet to be looked at based on a revised Gantt chart, right? Okay. So.
And nothing's going to happen until phase 1's complete, right, Patrick?
Well, that's the first step.
Yeah. So there's a second kick at the cat in that decision when you have that information meeting in the spring.
That's going to be one bruised cat. Okay, so that said, we can finally move beyond finance 5. Thank you, Raj. So we're looking for committee correspondence and actions, and I know that we the LAC had put together some list of 7 or 8 questions. Perhaps I don't know, Steph, can you pull those questions up?
Yeah.
And then maybe Patrick can address them. Some of them I know we've touched on already, but maybe we could do a quick go through on that.
Here, I'll just do a screen share.
Somebody said did they get cut off?
It's the one you want. Said,
I think you're doing well. Of 6 of them, 1, 2, and 3 have been done.
Yeah, we talked about 1, 2, and 3. Is there anything further on those items?
No, I think we've touched on those.
In terms of short-term repair, the products that you'd mentioned, I've looked into those. I haven't discussed them with Glenn and Urban Systems. I had previously talked with CRIAS about those products. They weren't very positive on the potential.
But I think Patrick, in light of CRIAS, they're going to be coming at it from a completely different standpoint. They're going to be looking at it from a suitable long-term solution,
yeah,
and the big picture. Right now, this is being looked at as something that's going to get us through the next 2 or 3 years, perhaps, as a short-term remedy to try and secure the water source until the big picture longer term.
Yeah, that's true. So I'll finish that point then, is that that is something that we'll look into further, the possibility of a short-term solution. There seems to be a couple of types of products. The one that you were describing to me when we met on site was that does require the reservoir to be lower down, and the vegetation cleared in order to, and because we don't know where the leaks are, it would have to be applied to a possible area along the dam. We wouldn't be able to do that until this summer. And then there are products that, the claim is that you can just sprinkle it on the water and it'll make its way into the cracks and seal them. I mean, that's another, I think that works, is more likely to be successful if we had a clear picture of exactly where we're trying to seal. But we'll investigate those further, those options, and we can talk about it when we meet again in February.
Yeah. I think in the research that I've done and per our discussion, it would seem that, for under $5,000 with a minimal amount of effort and labor, that, we may be able to patch together an interim solution that although may not be 100% nor a long-term answer, I think it could help, and at that price, I have to think that it's probably worth trying. But anyway, that's in your court, of course.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look into that further.
Thank you.
Is that we talked about leaks, and it appears as though leaks are
Can you speak up closer to the mic, please?
Yeah, the leaks are obviously going to be a big influence on the risks of running out of water, and it appears as though that there's been a decent breakthrough there. The numbers seem to have creeped up a bit, but they're still in the order of 10 gallons, 8 to 10 gallons a minute lower than they were. You can do some quick sensitivity analysis to say that, okay, if we've now reduced the losses by 8 gallons a minute, what does that look like over a 2-month summer period? It might be enough to save you, given that you've already got through. Might be just a calculation to consider rather than prior to jumping into likely tens of thousands of dollars of works.
Yeah, Glenn, just I had Patrick up at the reservoir this fall, and I was closely monitoring the point at which water was starting to show laterally through the south wall. And I've got a specific height on the meter reading where all of a sudden the water shows up. And the higher it goes from that point, the more the water shows flowing down the road and along the south side. So I think that we've got a fairly finite south edge of the berm from a specific height up, that sprinkling a Shalex or Dammit type of product may prove beneficial. And again, it's one solution. As you say, we found some water leakage up Highland Trail. We still may have some more. Resolving that is one side. But when we watch the Cartner Creek flowing as great as it is, to the point where we fill up to the overflow, during our rainfalls. As soon as the rainfall stops, we start dropping like we did last year. The higher the water, the more the water flow. At first that's 6, 7, 8 centimeters a day, which then tapers down as it drops to the 4 centimeters a day. It stays constant at that all the way down to the set limit. And then it seems to stop and slow down significantly.
Yeah.
So I think that we've got a possible finite area that we could try an experiment with, that for, like I say, $3,000 to $5,000.
Yeah. Okay. That's great if you've isolated it to a location. I was thinking that it still required a shotgun approach to.
No, I think we have an area that we may be able to try and focus some attention on.
Yeah. Okay. That's great.
Okay. Sorry, Steph, could you go back to the list, please? Thank you. There we go. Thank you. All right, Patrick, you're on again.
Okay. So dam management, as I mentioned, we had some direction from the provincial dam safety officers to move forward on that front. Essentially, we've kicked that down the road to the point where we determine whether we're talking about it, ongoing dam management or dam decommissioning. So I think that's to be determined.
I thought you guys were getting pressure from the provincial authority on that. Have you managed to buy some time there, or you're just ignoring them and that works too?
Well, I did send him an email saying that that's what we're facing, and he didn't. I didn't get a reply. So
okay, so he's ignoring us. Either way.
I mean, they have
that dam, Patrick. So if it fails, I'm just kidding. My house is located right below the dam, so I'm.
Right.
Glenn, I don't want to alarm you, but bring boots to the back door.
Fair enough.
Update. Right, the letter of agreement. So we had our meeting with the Hood Point LAC a little while ago. We did raise some of our concerns that we discussed, and what we're going to do is, essentially revise the letter to something that seems, more reasonable, and hopefully we can send it to them and get their agreement. And if we have to meet with them, we'll do that. We took it offline from the LAC meeting. In particular that they want, there was an item in there indicating that, we're monitoring the flows daily and it can't be more than 60 cubic meters a day. It's not really reasonable or manageable or useful in any way. So I think we will revisit that with them based on our comments before we move forward with anything. I don't know that this is really even necessary, but they're insisting on it. So
here's a question from my point, and we kind of just discussed it casually amongst ourselves at various points. As the operator of all the water systems, i.e. you guys, it's your responsibility to deliver water to Eagle Cliff, and you determine how best to do it. And if that's what you determine, I'm not sure that we have a role, we, the LAC for Eagle Cliff, have any role in signing any document of agreement to that effect. I mean, this is you guys' responsibility to deliver water. This is your solution, and story, end of story.
Yeah, that's fine. I think we'll sort it out with them. Ultimately, we don't need an agreement with them to provide water to Eagle Cliff in an emergency. We're just, trying to do things that are in accordance with the various LAC's wishes and approaches that they want to take. So
we don't want to set their hair on fire either.
No.
Fair enough. All right, thank you. Is there anything in the lower half that needs inclusion discussion? There's lots of long-standing old things, but given that we've been going an hour and a half now, I'm wondering if we want to, or 2 hours now, I'm wondering if we want to touch on any of that stuff or just let it go for now.
Well, it would be nice if there's any that we can get off the list.
That's fair enough. Good point. Patrick?
Metering frequency.
That was an LAC initiated discussion, so that wouldn't be for Patrick to answer. That would be for the LAC.
Well, I think what was being discussed by the LAC and recommended to the BIM was the idea of reading the meters earlier and more often as a method of trying to determine leaks in a timely fashion. That's right. Where that came from. I know that there was some discussion about the cost of the FTE, the person time to do that. I know that David Rynch was a long-standing great supporter of that recommendation. I don't know that there's any more development on it. We talked about the idea that this may be resolved come future if we were to go to some sort of electronic automated meter reading system.
Well, that's where you'd really get some advantage in terms of early leak detection. And that was an item in the capital budget that Raj presented earlier. Essentially carried over from last year's budget. We had other priorities and hadn't made much progress on that, but the plan is to look at the business case and some of the planning level details around how that would work, could work, and potentially implementing in the following years.
Okay. So Glenn, are we in a position where we want to remove that as a, an ongoing discussion item, or what do we want to do with that? Any thoughts?
Yeah, remove it, I think.
Okay. Glenn, you're okay with that?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
And Carla's on the committee too, Tim.
Oh,
I know.
okay.
I did not
You're
know
one of us, are you? I missed
She
that in the
joined
intro
us.
somehow. Sorry.
Sure, Carl.
It's okay.
Won't happen again.
Yeah.
No worries.
Sorry about that. I apologize deeply.
It's totally fine.
Okay, so that one can go away then. Can we get the list back, Steph?
Mhm.
Thank you. Sorry. Reservoir liner replacement. We've discussed that a number of times. I don't think there's anything else to discuss there. I think that one can probably be moved as a specific discussion or item. Agreed, guys?
Yep.
And Carla. Make all available to the public, including cost of. Okay, I think that was done in the form of the various documents, so that's not an action item of anything that can be removed. Revisit the RFP report in open forum at the next LAC. The RFP has been awarded, discussed, and so we're good with that. That one can go away.
Yeah.
Number 5's done.
Sorry, what's that, Allison?
Number 5 is done.
5 is done.
Yeah.
Previous action. Okay. Thank you. Yes, it was. Good work, Raj. Staff volunteered to report back on what the rent and utilities line item referred to.
Yeah.
There was, in the budget item last year, there was a rent and utilities number. And I think the question was asked, what exactly was that for? And there was some, I thought, Raj,
I went over that in the beginning of the presentation, Tim. So the rent itself is an allocation of municipal hall rent.
Okay.
Utilities. And
okay.
Utilities is the actual utilities cost of operating the the electrical equipment that requires hydro.
For the pumps and wells.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, you did go over that. Yeah. Okay, back to the list. Thanks, Steph. LAC chair suggested putting together a timeline, which was done. Good work, Patrick. So that one can go away, and LAC agenda will include work plan, including both short-term and long-term solutions. So we're still kind of working our way through that a little bit. I'd like to maybe keep that one in the background because yes, we're plugging away on the Cove Bay, but.
Well, isn't that sort of going to get covered off in phase 1 work that's being done right now?
It should, Glenn.
Yeah.
Sorry, I must admit I was distracted.
Yeah, I think the phase 1 work is focused on the long-term solutions, and that we may have, while the short-term solutions, we may be looking at some sort of dam maintenance, the emergency measures and agreement with Hood Point. I mean, those are short-term.
I think I'd like to keep that one just as a reminder below the line like it is. I don't know if anybody has any objection to that. Are we okay with that?
Yeah, that's good.
Well, we got rid of 7, so that's good.
We did pretty well there. Okay, so does that take us to next item, information, letter re-infrastructure planning grant? I think we've discussed that, have we not?
These are just information items provided to you.
Okay.
You have access to that information. They're not discussion items.
All right, then I think we're there. So do we open it up to the public one more lap? I don't know that we've got many public left. We've got Ian Kennard still there.
Malcolm, did Malcolm leave?
Yeah. Just what you see.
Sufficiently bored, everybody.
There you go. We wore them down, guys and gals. All right.
Success.
Committed volunteers we have.
Okay, so the second last item is the next meeting. Do we have a plan for that? I guess we're probably trying to line up with budget finalization plan. Is that where we're going on that, or what's next?
No, it would be February.
February?
That was in Patrick's time chart.
Yeah, I think
Helpful.
it's still to be determined, but sometime early in the year, probably February, and we'll keep everybody advised on how we're progressing with phase one and defining the options and when we'll be in a position to meet with the LAC. I guess one question would be, would it be the same format as this meeting, essentially an LAC meeting that public is welcome to attend?
I think that would work well.
I would think it should and needs to be. I mean, in a post-COVID world, it would be nice to actually have a community meeting again, where we could actually, stand up in front of people and have a discussion. But I don't know that when exactly we're going to be there.
But you can still invite all the community that wants to observe to be a part of the Zoom conversation. And for others that just want to watch, they can do it on the video.
Agreed.
Live.
Yeah, agreed. So I think, yes, we're in the same category and hoping for a post-Zoom, or sorry, post-COVID scenario.
Zoom world.
And
Post-Zoom. There's a Freudian for you, huh? Okay, so sometime early February, we'll stay in touch on that. So we're ready for adjournment. Do we have a motion for that, or do we have any last words? One more time, last words. Okay, seeing
Motion
none.
to adjourn.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah, really, beyond
Yeah,
happy.
happy holidays, everybody.
Likewise.